Marcus Chen's voice cut through the marble silence of his corner office like a blade through silk. At 39, he commanded a financial empire from the 42nd floor of a Chicago skyscraper, where algorithms danced with billions and precision was the only religion he practiced. Everything in his world followed rules, except for the chaos that had just landed on his mahogany desk. "What do you mean she's enrolled where?" His steel-gray eyes fixed on his trembling assistant, who clutched a tablet like a shield. "Sir, I processed the paperwork you signed. The forms were completed exactly as—" "I don't care what was completed," Marcus interrupted, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished floor as he paced. "Lily belongs at Westmore Academy, not some public institution." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Lake Michigan stretched endlessly. But Marcus saw only his reflection, a man in an impeccable charcoal suit with haunted eyes that hadn't truly rested since the car accident 4 years ago. Since Isabella had been taken from them in a moment of twisted metal and shattered glass. Before we continue with today's story, if you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps me keep sharing these inspiring tales that touch your day. Thank you for your support. His daughter Lily had once been a whirlwind of curiosity and laughter. Now, at 8 years old, she moved through their penthouse like a ghost, speaking only when necessary, her spark extinguished alongside her mother's life. Marcus had tried everything: child psychologists, art therapists, even a brief stint at a Swiss boarding school for emotionally fragile children. Nothing had brought back her voice, her smile, her essence. A soft chime interrupted his spiraling thoughts. His phone displayed a text from Lily. "The art teacher let us paint with our hands today. It was nice." Marcus stared at the screen. She hadn't texted him voluntarily in months. "Cancel my 3 o'clock, he muttered to his assistant. "I'm going to Riverside Elementary." Riverside Elementary stood like a warm embrace against the backdrop of Chicago's working-class neighborhood. The brick facade bore decades of weathering, and the front steps showed the wear of countless small feet. Inside, the hallways hummed with an energy Marcus hadn't expected. Not chaos, but life in its purest form. Hand-painted murals covered the walls, and the scent of tempera paint mixed with the comfort of home-cooked cafeteria meals. A receptionist with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair welcomed him. "You must be Lily's father. She's mentioned you." The woman's smile was genuine, unmarked by the polished artifice Marcus encountered in his usual circles. As they walked through corridors lined with student artwork, Marcus found himself slowing. There was something here, a warmth that expensive marble and modern architecture had never achieved in Lily's previous schools. Outside classroom 3B, he paused. Through the small window, he could see 20 children arranged in a loose circle on a colorful rug. At the center sat a woman who couldn't have been older than 30, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a soft green sweater and jeans that had seen better days. She wasn't lecturing. She was listening. A boy with thick glasses was sharing how his goldfish had died over the weekend. A girl with pigtails admitted she was afraid of thunderstorms. The teacher, Marcus assumed, didn't interrupt or redirect. She simply nodded, her presence creating a sanctuary where children felt safe to be vulnerable. "Sometimes the hardest feelings are the most important ones to share," she said softly. "You don't have to carry them alone." Marcus's breath caught in his chest. There in the circle was Lily, not slumped or vacant as she'd been at home for years, but sitting upright, engaged. Her eyes held something he'd almost forgotten existed: attentiveness. Hope. That evening, over Chinese takeout in their penthouse dining room, Marcus asked gently, "How was your day, sweetheart?" Lily looked up from her lo mein, cautious but not afraid. "Ms. Elena read us a story about a girl who lost her way in a forest. We drew pictures of what she might be feeling, not just what she looked like." Marcus set down his chopsticks. Would you like to stay at Riverside?" The question hung in the air between them. Lily didn't answer immediately, but when she finally nodded, barely perceptible but unmistakable, Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Later, alone in his study, he stared at 2 folders spread across his desk. One bore the gold embossed seal of Westmore Academy. Prestige, connections, guaranteed admission to Ivy League universities. The other was a simple manila folder labeled Riverside Elementary, a school that dared to believe children's hearts mattered as much as their test scores. Maybe for once, the best choice wasn't the most expensive one. Elena Rodriguez had never planned to become a teacher. 5 years ago, she'd been a trauma counselor for veterans, trained to navigate the labyrinth of minds shattered by war. She understood that pain often lived in silence, that healing couldn't be rushed or scheduled. Then came the diagnosis that changed everything. Her younger brother Diego, barely 22, had been stationed overseas when the IED exploded. He came home missing more than just his left leg. Pieces of his soul had been left in the desert sand. Elena had watched him struggle through physical therapy, through nightmares, through the slow work of rebuilding a life. When Diego took his own life on a rainy October evening, Elena's world imploded. She quit her practice, abandoned her downtown office with its leather chairs and framed diplomas, and found herself drawn to Riverside Elementary, a place where broken things were allowed to heal at their own pace. Now she taught in room 3B, which looked nothing like a traditional classroom. Soft lighting replaced harsh fluorescence. Comfortable cushions and reading nooks replaced rigid desk rows. A wall labeled "Today, I Feel" allowed students to honestly express their emotional weather. Here, children weren't problems to be fixed, but people to be understood. Lily Chen hadn't spoken for her first week. She sat at the edges of group activities, watching but not participating. Elena didn't push. When other children shared stories of lost pets or divorce anxieties, Elena would catch Lily's eye with a gentle smile that said, "You belong here, even in your silence." On day 7, Lily placed her name under "Curious" instead of "Invisible" on the feelings wall. It was a small victory that felt monumental. Marcus found himself returning to the school daily, no longer as a concerned parent, but as a man witnessing a miracle. He would arrive during lunch, positioning himself where he could observe through the classroom windows. What he saw challenged everything he thought he knew about education. Children weren't memorizing facts or competing for grades. They were learning to identify emotions, to offer comfort to classmates, to find their voices in a world that often demanded silence from the young. The transformation in Lily was undeniable. She began sleeping through the night again. She hummed while getting dressed for school. She even asked for art supplies to use at home, her first voluntary request in years. One afternoon, during what Elena called connection time, Lily approached a boy named Jamie who usually sat alone. Jamie was on the autism spectrum, nonverbal, and often overwhelmed by the sensory chaos of typical classrooms. Lily knelt beside him and offered half of her sandwich. "Nobody should eat alone," she whispered, her first spontaneous words to a classmate in years. Jamie didn't speak, but he accepted the sandwich and, slowly, leaned against Lily's shoulder. Elena watched with tears threatening to spill, and Marcus, unseen in the hallway, had to step away to compose himself. His daughter, who had retreated from the world after losing her mother, had chosen compassion over self-protection. It was on a Tuesday morning that Elena introduced the memory box. She placed the wooden container, painted in soft pastels, on a low shelf near the reading corner. Above it hung a simple sign, "Letters to Those We Mississippi." Sometimes, Elena explained to her students, we carry feelings that are too big for our hearts alone. This week, if you'd like, you can write a letter to someone who isn't here anymore. It could be anyone, a grandparent who passed away, a friend who moved far away, even a pet who's no longer with us. Most children nodded with understanding. Some had used the memory box before, but Lily sat perfectly still, absorbing every word. That afternoon, while her classmates worked on watercolor paintings, Lily pulled out a sheet of lavender paper and began to write. Her pencil moved hesitantly at first, then with growing determination. She erased often, rewrote entire sentences. Her small face creased with concentration. When she finished, she approached Elena with a folded letter clutched in her trembling hands. "Can you make sure this gets to her?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible. Elena looked down at the precious cargo. Where should it go, honey? Lily pointed upward. To Mama. In heaven. Elena's heart clenched. She took the letter with reverence. I'll do everything I can to make sure she receives it. After school, alone in her classroom, Elena carefully unfolded the letter. Her hands shook as she read. Dear Mama, I painted a butterfly today, and it didn't make me cry. The purple wasn't scary anymore. I share my sandwich with Jamie, who doesn't talk much but has kind eyes. Ms. Elena says feelings are visitors, not permanent residents. I still miss you every day. But today I remembered how to laugh. Love, Lily. Elena pressed the letter to her heart, tears streaming down her face. She placed it gently in the memory box, understanding that she was holding more than paper and ink. She was holding the first sign of a little girl learning to live again. That evening, Marcus picked up Lily from school as usual. She climbed into his BMW, quieter than normal, clutching her backpack tightly. As they waited at a red light, Marcus noticed a corner of lavender paper peeking from her bag. What's that, sweetheart? He asked gently. Lily's eyes widened. She hadn't meant for him to see. Slowly, she pulled out the letter and handed it to him without a word. Marcus unfolded it and read. By the third line, his vision blurred. By the final sentence, he had pulled over to the curb, his hands shaking uncontrollably. For 4 years, he had buried his grief under spreadsheets and acquisition deals. He had hidden his pain from Lily, thinking he was protecting her, not realizing they both needed to mourn together. Daddy. Lily's voice was small, uncertain. He turned to face her, tears flowing freely. I miss her too, baby. Every single day. Lily unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned forward, resting her head against his shoulder. I know, she whispered. I could tell. It was the first time they had shared their grief aloud, and somehow, in that moment, it felt less overwhelming. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Riverside before classes began. He waited until the last student had entered Elena's classroom before knocking softly on the doorframe. Elena looked up, surprised. Mr. Chen. Marcus stepped inside, holding Lily's letter in his hands. He extended it toward her, and for a moment, Elena thought he might be angry. Instead, his voice cracked as he spoke. I've built my career on saving companies, on turning around failing investments. He paused, looking down at the letter. But you're the first person who's actually saved my daughter. Elena's eyes filled with tears. She's not just surviving anymore, Marcus continued. She's living. She's remembering who she was before the world broke her. His voice dropped to a whisper. You gave her back to me, and I don't know how to thank you for that. Elena stepped closer, her voice barely audible. You just did. In the weeks that followed, Marcus found himself at Riverside more frequently. Not out of duty, but out of genuine desire to understand this place that had worked miracles where expensive therapists had failed. Each visit revealed new wonders. Lily helping younger students, participating in group discussions, even volunteering to read aloud during story time. One evening, after the children had gone home and Lily was at her piano lesson, Marcus found Elena organizing student artwork in her classroom. Can I ask you something? He said from the doorway. Elena turned, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Of course. Why this? Why here? He gestured to the classroom, with its soft corners and emotional honesty. Elena paused, her eyes drifting to the memory box, to the feelings wall, to the artwork that celebrated process over perfection. She took a deep breath. I used to work with veterans, she began. Men and women who had seen things that most people couldn't imagine. I helped them navigate trauma, survivor's guilt, and the long road back to themselves. Marcus listened, sensing there was more. I had a brother, Diego. He served 3 tours before. She stopped, collected herself. After he came home, I watched him struggle to find his place in a world that expected him to be okay simply because he was breathing. When I lost him, I couldn't go back to my office, couldn't sit across from people trying to hold their lives together while mine was falling apart. Her voice grew stronger. So I came here to work with children who haven't yet learned to hide their pain, who are still brave enough to feel everything fully. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I thought I was helping Lily by giving her the best of everything money could buy. but I never asked what she actually needed. Elena offered a small smile. Most parents don't. They're trying to protect their children. It's love, even when it's misdirected. A costly kind of love, Marcus admitted. He looked around the room again. You didn't teach her academics. You taught her how to remember her mother without drowning in the memory. Elena blinked back tears. She talks about Isabella again, Marcus added. For 3 years, she wouldn't mention her mother's name. Now she tells me about songs they used to sing together, recipes they plan to try. She even drew a picture of the three of us, with Isabella as an angel watching over us. The next day, Lily placed another letter in the memory box. This one wasn't addressed to her mother. Elena, after reading it, quietly passed it to Marcus during pickup. He opened it in his car alone. Dear Daddy, you smiled today when I told you about the story we read. You probably didn't notice, but I did. I think we're both getting better at remembering Mama without being too sad. I'm glad Ms. Elena helped us. Love, Lily. Marcus pressed the letter to his lips, overwhelmed by his daughter's wisdom. Friday afternoon found Marcus arriving early to surprise Lily. The school was winding down, hallways echoing with the gentle chaos of dismissal. He walked toward room 3B, planning to peek in before Lily saw him. But something made him stop outside the door. Through the window, he saw Elena kneeling beside Lily under the classroom's large oak tree, a tree that had been there longer than the school itself, its branches reaching toward the skylights above. Lily's eyes were closed, her small hands pressed against the bark. Elena whispered something Marcus couldn't hear, and Lily nodded, breathing deeply. Then she giggled. The sound hit Marcus like a physical force. That laugh, bright and unguarded. He hadn't heard it in 4 years. Elena laughed too, a gentle sound that harmonized with Lily's joy. Lily leaned forward and hugged the tree with her tiny arms, as if embracing life itself. She turned to Elena and whispered something that made the teacher smile and wipe a tear from Lily's cheek. Marcus stepped back, not wanting to intrude. He leaned against the wall, eyes closed, overwhelmed. Whatever magic was happening in that room, his daughter was returning to herself, one laugh at a time. In the following weeks, something beautiful and unexpected began to bloom. Marcus and Elena had stopped pretending their conversations were purely about Lily's progress. What had started as parent-teacher conferences had evolved into lingering chats in the school garden, shared coffee in the faculty lounge, and once a chance encounter at the farmer's market that turned into an hour-long walk through the neighborhood. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic moments, just the slow recognition of two people who had forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen. One evening, after helping Elena organize books for a literacy fundraiser, Marcus found himself sitting across from her in the empty classroom. The overhead lights hummed softly, but the space between them felt warm and intimate. I never imagined this, Marcus admitted, stirring lukewarm coffee. 4 years ago, I was learning to balance board meetings with bedtime stories. Then suddenly I was trying to be both mother and father, and I never felt adequate at either role. Elena's gaze softened. You've been more than adequate. It never felt like enough, he said. She reached across the table and touched his hand. Love doesn't always feel like enough in the moment, but it creates safety. And Lily has always felt safe with you. Elena was falling for him. She knew it, but fear held her back. She couldn't shake the feeling that her presence in their delicate world was something fragile, temporary. So she moved carefully, loved quietly, until the day everything shattered. It happened on a Wednesday morning without warning. Victoria Hartwell, Marcus's former mother-in-law, swept into Riverside Elementary like a storm front. Dressed in designer clothes and wielding righteous indignation, she announced to the front office that she was there to evaluate the unsuitable environment her granddaughter had been subjected to. No one thought to stop her. She found Lily in the school garden, sitting cross-legged in a circle with other children while Elena guided them through their weekly gratitude sharing. Lily leaned comfortably against Elena's side and whispered, "This is where I feel happiest." Victoria's voice cut through the peaceful moment like breaking glass. Happy with this woman? All heads turned. Victoria advanced, her designer heels clicking against the concrete path, her voice rising with each word. You're not a licensed therapist. You're not a counselor. You're a substitute teacher playing with children's minds for your own gratification. Elena stood slowly, keeping her voice level. Mrs. Hartwell, I understand you're concerned, but this isn't the appropriate place for— Oh, I'm sure it's never the appropriate place for accountability, Victoria snapped, playing savior to a grieving child and her vulnerable father. A woman like you, unmarried, unqualified, thinking you can replace my Isabella. Gasps rippled through the garden. Elena's hands trembled, but she held her ground. Then, shocking everyone, Lily stood up. She positioned herself between Elena and her grandmother, arms spread wide like a tiny guardian. Stop being mean to her, Lily shouted, her voice shaking but fierce. She's the only one who listened when I was too sad to talk. She's the only one who didn't try to fix me like I was broken. The garden fell silent. Lily turned to Elena, tears glistening, but her voice steady. If I could choose, she said, each word trembling with truth, I'd want you to be my mom. Elena dropped to her knees, stunned and speechless. Victoria's mouth opened and closed without sound. And then Marcus was there, striding through the crowd with quiet authority. He looked first at Victoria, his voice firm but controlled. That's enough. Then he turned to Elena and took her hand, not in secret, not in hesitation, but with complete certainty. We're done hiding, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. This is our family now. The teacher stood in respectful silence. The children watched in awe. And for the first time in years, Lily smiled with pure joy, because she had spoken her truth and been heard. Marcus had never truly confronted Victoria before. Throughout the years of criticism and second-guessing that followed Isabella's death, he had absorbed her disapproval with the quiet guilt of a man doing his best, but feeling it was never enough. But after Lily's public declaration, everything changed. Victoria stormed into his penthouse 2 days later, armed with legal documents and accusations. She's manipulating the child, Victoria declared, throwing a folder onto his granite countertop. You're too grief-stricken to see it clearly. Enough. Marcus's voice, calm but razor-sharp, cut through her tirade. Victoria blinked, startled by his tone. For 4 years, I've let you question every decision I've made as a father. I've accepted your grief, your anger, even your insults. But not this. He stepped forward. You don't get to decide who makes Lily feel safe. She does. Victoria's face flushed. You're going to let her be raised by someone who isn't her mother? I'm standing beside the woman who helped my daughter find her voice again, Marcus said. And I won't let you take that away from her. Victoria's voice cracked with fury. Then I'll file for custody. Marcus didn't flinch. Do what you feel you must. But I suggest you ask Lily what she needs before you try to own her. Elena sat alone on the weathered bench behind the school that Friday evening, watching the sun set over the Chicago skyline. In her hands was a resignation letter she'd spent 2 sleepless nights writing. Margaret's words echoed in her mind. Thinking you can replace my Isabella. No, Elena didn't want to replace anyone. But maybe, unintentionally, she had stepped into something too sacred, too fragile. She loved Lily, loved the way she tilted her head when concentrating, loved how her whole face lit up when she felt truly safe. And she was falling in love with Marcus, quietly but deeply. But now there were custody threats, questions about her qualifications, her motivations. Worst of all, Lily was caught in the middle. So Elena did what she thought was right. She resigned, left a letter on Marcus's doorstep, and disappeared before dawn. The letter read, Marcus, if my presence threatens Lily's peace, I'd rather step away than take another safe place from her. She has survived so much loss. She deserves stability, not more upheaval. Please tell her that she changed my life, and I will never stop caring about her. Elena. Marcus found the letter the next morning and felt his world tilt. He read it 3 times, each reading making the words more final, more devastating. No, not again. He called her number, disconnected. He called the school. They confirmed her resignation, but had no forwarding information. He stood in his living room, fists clenched, heart racing. He had lost Isabella to a drunk driver. He couldn't let Lily lose Elena to fear. Lily locked herself in her room the moment she learned Elena was gone. Marcus knocked gently on her door for hours. "Sweetheart, please talk to me." Silence. That night, he sat on the floor outside her room. "I know what it feels like to lose someone who brings light into dark places," he said softly. "I lost your mama, and I didn't fight hard enough to keep Elena from leaving." Inside, a soft sniffle. "I won't make that mistake again," Marcus continued. "I promise you, Lily. I won't let you lose the person who helped you find yourself." The doorknob turned slowly. Lily appeared in her pajamas, eyes swollen from crying, clutching Elena's letter in her small hands. "Let's go find her," she whispered. Marcus knelt and wrapped her in his arms. "Yes, let's bring her home." It took Marcus 3 days to track Elena down. The school had no forwarding address. Her phone was disconnected, but he knew Elena wouldn't disappear completely. She was the type to keep giving even when she was breaking. Through a fellow teacher, he learned she had begun volunteering at a community center on the South Side, a place that served families who couldn't afford private therapy, where children could process trauma through art and play. He and Lily drove through unfamiliar neighborhoods on a Saturday morning, past corner stores with Spanish signs and murals that told stories of struggle and hope. The community center was housed in a converted church, its stained glass windows casting rainbow light across worn wooden floors. They found Elena in the back room, kneeling beside a little boy as he painted a house with crooked windows and a bright yellow door. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, paint smudged on her jeans, looking tired but at peace. Lily let go of Marcus's hand and walked forward. Elena didn't see them at first. When she turned and spotted them, her breath caught. "Lily." The little girl stopped a few feet away and reached in her backpack, pulling out the lavender letter, the first one she'd ever written to her mother. She held it out with both hands. "I kept it," Lily whispered, "for someone who could read it with the same heart you did." Elena took the letter with trembling hands, tears spilling immediately. "I never stopped thinking about you," Elena said. "Then why did you leave?" Lily asked, her voice small. Elena knelt to meet Lily's eyes. "Because I was scared I didn't belong in your family." "But you do," Lily said simply. "You're the missing piece." Marcus stepped forward then. No grand gestures or rehearsed speeches, just the quiet certainty of a man who had learned what truly mattered. "I'm not here to make promises about the future," he said to Elena. "I'm here to tell you that we're incomplete without you. We're not perfect, but we're real, and we're waiting." Elena looked at him, then at Lily, then back at the letter in her hands, the bridge between a little girl's grief and her hope. She didn't need time to think. She had spent 3 days thinking, and all roads led back to them. "I want to come home," she whispered. "Not as a teacher, not as a replacement for anyone, but as myself, as part of this family." That evening, they returned to the penthouse together. Elena sat on the couch with Lily, reading a bedtime story by lamplight, while Marcus moved quietly around the kitchen, making tea and listening to the sound of his daughter's laughter mixing with Elena's gentle voice. No one used labels. No one needed to. It was written in the rhythm of their evening routine, in Lily's contentment, in the way Marcus looked at both of them like they were the miracle he'd never expected but somehow found. Elena hadn't returned as the teacher or the counselor or the replacement. She had come back as something more sacred. Home. 2 years later, the seasons had cycled through their eternal dance. Spring had given way to summer, summer to fall, fall to winter, and back again. The Rodriguez family had found their rhythm. Imperfect, beautiful, real. Riverside Elementary still stood at the corner of Maple and 3rd, but it had grown. The success of Elena's emotional learning program had caught the attention of educators citywide. Marcus had quietly provided funding for the Riverside Center for Social and Emotional Learning, which now served as a model for schools across the district. Lily had blossomed into a 10-year-old who radiated quiet confidence. She served as a peer mediator, helped new students find their place, and had recently been chosen to represent her class at the district's Young Leaders Conference. Teachers spoke of her empathy, her ability to see the lonely child in any crowd, her gift for making others feel seen. Marcus had found balance in ways he never thought possible. While still running his investment firm, he had begun dedicating significant time and resources to educational reform. He served on the school board, advocated for trauma-informed teaching practices, and had discovered that success measured in children's smiles was far more fulfilling than success measured in stock prices. On a warm June morning, families gathered on Riverside's front lawn for the fifth-grade graduation ceremony. Folding chairs formed neat rows across the grass, while streamers danced in the breeze and parents adjusted cameras for the perfect shot. Among the crowd stood Victoria Hartwell. The relationship with her son-in-law remained complicated, but over the past 2 years, she had witnessed undeniable changes in her granddaughter. Lily's phone calls were filled with laughter and stories. Her school projects showed creativity and joy. While Victoria had never explicitly apologized, she had quietly begun to understand that sometimes love meant letting go of what you thought was best in favor of what actually was. At the podium, Lily stood tall in her white dress, a speech written on note cards clutched in her steady hands. She looked out at the sea of faces and began. When I first came to Riverside, I had forgotten how to be happy. I'd lost my mama, and for a long time, I thought maybe I'd lost myself too. The crowd grew quiet, drawn in by her honesty. But then I met someone who didn't try to fix me. She just sat with me until I remembered who I was underneath all that sadness. Elena, sitting in the front row beside Marcus, felt her throat tighten. She taught me that feelings aren't problems to solve. They're just part of being human. Lily continued, her voice growing stronger. She showed me that it's okay to miss people and love new people at the same time. Marcus reached for Elena's hand. Today, I want to thank my dad for never giving up on me, Lily said, her eyes finding Marcus in the crowd. And I want to thank the woman who helped me find my voice again. She paused, then looked directly at Elena. The woman I'm proud to call my mom. Elena's breath hitched, tears flowing freely. The crowd erupted in gentle applause that seemed to go on forever. Even Victoria, standing in the back, found herself wiping her eyes. Later that evening, after the reception had ended and the last congratulations had been exchanged, the three of them walked slowly through Riverside's quiet hallways one final time before summer break. They passed the bulletin board where Lily's artwork still hung, the reading corner where she'd first found her voice, the memory box that had helped her heal. Outside, the Chicago skyline glowed gold in the setting sun. They walked barefoot across the grass, shoes forgotten, Lily skipping ahead, while Marcus and Elena followed hand in hand. There were no grand declarations, no formal ceremonies needed. Just presence, peace, and the quiet satisfaction of a family that had been forged not by genetics alone, but by choice, healing, and love. As they reached the school gate, Lily turned and called out, "Come on, slowpokes. Let's go home." And the three of them walked into their future together, whole at last. From a simple clerical error had come the greatest discovery of all, that sometimes the path we never planned is the one that leads us exactly where we need to be. That healing is possible, that families come in all forms, and that love, patient, persistent, transformative love, can mend even the most broken hearts. Because sometimes it's not the road we choose that takes us home. It's the one we never saw coming that delivers us to exactly where we belong.